Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, professionals, students, and of course, to all of our gamers. Welcome to the second day of the EsportsU Coaches and Directors Summit, where we take this time during the back to school season to talk about topics and conversations that are important to us and important to you. And today we've got some really exciting conversations following a upcoming Trends in 24, What to Look For fireside by myself. We will be featuring two really interesting conversations talking about enrollment in esports and what does that mean and look like, as well as a much anticipated D1 fireside chat talking about the recent conversations surrounding Division I schools and their place in esports. But without further ado, let's get started. My name is Chris Postel. Some of you may know me through many different hats that I wear, but today I'm speaking to you all as the author of the Trends in Collegiate Esports report. What we're going to do today is we are going to talk about upcoming trends from my perspective based on data, conversations, and analysis of what we're going to expect for this upcoming year. And I want to hear from you all, your conversations and your thoughts on some of the things that I will talk about today. So without further ado, let's get into it, shall we? Before I get started with the hot takes, I do want to take a moment to promote and share the Trends in Collegiate Esports report. We have done an incredible job over the past 4 years documenting the growth and the trajectory of the scholastic esports industry. And you can get your copy of the report today at www.esportsfoundry.com, where you can learn what thousands of people have already learned. We have a free light version for the most recent previous academic year for your own browsing with pictures and charts. And if you'd like to see the entire 86 data set, 235 page report, please, by all means, you can purchase it on our website, or you can have your school and your program purchase it on your behalf. Data is really important, and it really helps all of us make better decisions and stay more informed. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. So let's get started. First and foremost, we are going to talk about game titles that are new and upcoming for this academic year. 3 of these you may have heard about in various different ways, but the 4th may be a surprise to you. Let's go through each of them. We are going to see a new wave of fresh blood coming into both the FGC universe, as well as a possible resurgence in scholastic traditional sports titles. For the past couple of years, we really haven't seen much adaptation on sports titles in the college esports world. But with the entrance of EA College Football 2025, make no mistake, we are already seeing an immense amount of conversation between specific schools as they are integrating their program within their athletic program initiatives, especially for those schools that have players that are being represented in the game as players. We are seeing a lot more conversation from the administration as to how are we going to stand up this new title. Furthermore, within the third-party ecosystem of where scholastic esports exists, a lot of agencies, a lot of traditional sports groups, and a lot of traditional sports outlets are looking at college football as a easy adaptation into esports or their esports strategy. So while we may not see full conference indulgence at this time in the fall, make no mistake, there is going to be plenty of college football floating around in our ecosystem on Twitch, on Twitter, and on all of the tournament platforms that we use daily. On the other side of the coin, from a sports perspective, we have the NBA 2K initiative, which many of us know recently was put on ice and frozen by the NBA. However, we have note that a new organization has partnered with the NBA 2K and will be overseeing college operations for NBA 2K moving forward. We will be featuring one of the members of these organizations on our panels tomorrow, so definitely tune in for that. Nevertheless, NBA 2K will be officially sanctioned and recognized and supported. And from our internal sources, a minimum of 30 to 40 schools will be participating in the inaugural NBA 2K league that will be put on by this organization that you will learn more about tomorrow. Going to the FGC side, some of you may recall at the CECC Made Madness earlier this year that we announced the College Street Fighter Initiative, an official partnership with Capcom to bring Street Fighter to the college esports ecosystem. That's happening. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on our roadmap discussion. Please feel free to check the VODs if you have not seen that. But College Street Fighter is here, and it is coming, and it is coming to CECC and Made Madness and everything else that is part of that wonderful ecosystem. And we will not be doing this alone. We will be working with many partners, including partner conferences and partner organizations. And I do want to shout out one in particular, the College Street Fighter. College FGC is going to be our partner, one of them for College Street Fighter, and we're very excited to see them come to the table and join us for our inaugural season. So check Twitter, check our website, and check for registration dates to come in the EsportsU Discord. Now, the very last one that we have on here is 2XKO, which should be launching by all accounts. They just wrapped up a public beta and play period. And if you did not get a code, don't worry. The game will be dropping within this academic year, according to sources, most likely, and we will see adaptation in the spring. So for that and those sides, let's look forward to that. Moving on next to our upcoming slide, I do want to focus in, moving on from the highlights of new game titles, and let's just reaffirm what collegiate actually is before we go forward. So collegiate is an entrenched ecosystem. It is an immersive world, and it's a large world. Based on our most recent data from the Trends in College Esports report, we know quantifiably that there's over 750 esports programs across the United States. And we also know through more than a decade of research that just over half of on-campus students in the United States identify as a gamer. So the good news is that represents a population of over 2 million students that can love and participate in the things that we're doing, which is college esports. And we also know that 2/3 of that crowd is STEM or STEM adjacent. And this is important for organizations like EsportsU, or important for sponsors to know and understand as brands are looking for ways to authentically interact with our communities, as well as vice versa. How can we interact with them? Understanding these pieces of information is key to understanding our growth. And speaking of growth, what we learned last year for the first time is that scholastic esports is a $1 billion industry from a higher ed perspective. The students that are involved in our programs, involved in our clubs, involved in our activities collectively contribute over $1 billion in tuition-based revenue annually to the North American higher educational, college and university ecosystem. And that's very important to know and understand, because that does not consider all of the revenues that come in through scholarships. It doesn't consider all the revenues that come in through facilities and other initiatives. And speaking of facilities, it's important to talk about and identify that esports is for everyone. That is what the E stands for. And it's important to note, more so in this year than in previous years, that we celebrate it at our own pace in the ways that each of us can. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is we are seeing a lot on social media. We're seeing a lot in the press about the latest program that announces a $10 million facility, a $5 million program Unleash, a $1 million program Unleash, even a $500,000 program Unleash. And we need to understand that the programs that have come before us that are existing to this day may not have those same resources. And at the same time, we have a huge student and club ecosystem that is just as valid and just as present as the competitive programs that exist, whether they're academic or competitive or a hybrid of the two. And each of them have their own place in our esports ecosystem. Even if we're not all on the same linear line, we're still in the same ballpark and in the same sandbox, celebrating our common passion, which is gaming, at our own pace. And that needs to be heard, because I think we're focusing too much on the 1% perspectively of what we're celebrating and how are we defining success. Because there is success in each and every one of these pictures, even if that success is different. So that's one of my first hot takes that we're going to highlight today for this upcoming year. Let's not forget about that. And let's move on to our next slide, which is talking about a little more of that conversation. What is collegiate really? Well, we have the club conversation and we have the program conversation. And this has been a conversation that has been going on for a long time, especially as it pertains to competitive, but also as it pertains to infrastructure. We have discussed and we have lauded and we have celebrated that such and such conference has 400 participating teams, or a conference has over 100 participating schools, or that an event has brought in 1,000 people. We've also talked about full rides and scholarships and full-time employment opportunities and student worker opportunities. But at the end of the day, some of these conversations shift the needle in terms of what we define as membership in our community, and membership in terms of what we expect the scholastic esports industry to create and to endorse and to propagate. And this slide highlights two different pictures here. The first on the left is an event that was held in 2014 called Press Start. So it predates many of us. And in fact, some people that have gone on to work at TESPA or work in other organizations are seen today in this photo. And on the same vein, we have one of the winningest programs in all of esports history, Northwood Esports, which has celebrated highs and celebrated lows. And they have gone on to win world championships, and they have gone on to offer many full rides, and they have gone on to be a lauded success story amongst many in terms of how the competitive esports ecosystem recognizes each other. And there are pros and cons to both. Northwood has never put on a 1,000 student event before in their lifetime, and the Press Start initiative that was made entirely by students have never had the benefit of being offered compensation, whether it's scholarships or otherwise, for their work. Nevertheless, in 2024, this is a conversation that is more apparent than ever before, as a lot of clubs may feel unheard or left behind, especially as we have conference conversations around the evolution and sustainability of scholastic esports. The question of exclusionism becomes a big question in terms of what are we prioritizing building and who are we building it for? And going down that route does leave many students, many clubs, many student leaders wondering, where is my place in this? And at the same time, when we look at competitive esports programs and the arms race that has emerged over the past few years of scholarship driven, poaching, what games are we supporting? What leagues are we entering into? All of these are valid conversations, and that one does not exclude the other or invalidate the other. But in the context of what is esports to us and what should we laud as a success story, the answer is both. Because the reality is the number of Northwoods that we'll have will ebb and flow, and the number of large events that we'll see in our ecosystem will ebb and flow. But we need to make sure that we're celebrating and creating conversation spaces to allow for both of these sides of our industry to flourish, because we have been prioritizing perhaps one of these over the other for the past couple of years. And let's talk about The other side of the coin, which has been at many times viewed as controversial, it has been misunderstood, and I would even argue today it is not thoroughly understood, and that is about academic integration within esports. Starting this year, we are seeing lauded esports directors, storied and veteran people within our community have transitioned out of director roles into faculty roles, teaching esports courses. But what does teaching an esports course mean? How valid is it for a program to engage in academic integration and do programs that focus on academic integration? Do they have the same level of acceptance within our general ecosystem as, for example, schools that might engage in traditional competitive operations? The fact of the matter is, in this upcoming year, more than a third of colleges that have esports programs or esports initiatives are launching, have launched, or are exploring launching some level of academic integration to bring esports into the classroom. They are doing this for a number of different reasons. We can talk about all of them. The first, of course, is recruitment. The second, of course, is student experience. The third is grant funding and tuition-based politics. And the fourth is professional development and readying students for a career and a workforce that has applicable skills that are translatable from the esports industry. Whether or not these programs will matriculate students into the esports industry may not matter so much in today's day and age, because we are at the onset, the front end of early adapters that are bringing academics to esports and vice versa. What we need to be talking about and we need to be focusing on is thinking about how are we really engaging and integrating appropriately? How are we empowering our administration or our directors to speak for students appropriately as to the direction and the investment that goes into building an academic program? How are we thinking about the structuring of these initiatives so that there are pipelines and there are outcomes that are derivative for these initiatives, so that while these inaugural classes of students may be viewed in some ways as guinea pigs for the future, we need to go through these processes so that these trends that we're going down and these investments that are being made by the universities can see positive returns, not only for them, but also for the students. So pipeline is very important, but also the acknowledgement and the support is very important. Even if students are not getting placed in what is universally viewed as a bear market currently within the esports industry, we all know that. It is still important to note that whether it's through an elective program or a certificate program or even a baccalaureate degree program, there should be the universal support to help build and sustain inroads for whatever outcomes we need to see from academics. Furthermore, seeing positive support within esports from an academic mindset will result in additional investiture from the administrations back into the programs. And this is positive on both ends of the spectrum. But from the perspective of a school under which esports lives, for example, under athletics, where the athletics department or the director may not have direct purview to influence academic integration or conversations, the success of academics within esports can only be advantageous to that individual and to that department, because it allows for another connection point to be built within the university politics and system to create additional mission, additional scope creep of what the esports program was originally created to do and what it is actually able to do. That means more resources. That means more full-time administrators to help support students. That also means more ways that students can be involved and more ways for students to be made aware of the initiatives that exist on a college campus. Because we all have to understand our gaming population is not restricted to our esports programs. They're not restricted to just our esports clubs. And these are, at the best, representations of the whole, and at the worst, they're micro communities of the whole. So having more outlets to show and expose and educate esports to what may not be a core demographic, may not necessarily be hardcore esports fans, or they may actually be hardcore esports fans, it will nevertheless expand the number of students that are involved in our ecosystem. This translates to more viewership. This translates to more participation. This translates to more attendance at live events. And ultimately, at the end of the day, helps increase the sustainability of our ecosystem as a whole, which is very important to be talking about. So academics is huge. Moving on next, however, to the other huge conversation that we want to have about this upcoming academic year is how we look at and how we view third-party involvement. Now, we're going to talk about a couple of things here that some of you may care deeply about, and some of you may not care so much about. It might be a vanity metric, or it might be something that you are genuinely interested in seeing. So let's talk about it real quick. The first thing that I want to share is the bottom left statistic, which represents the amount of revenues that we suspect will be spent on facility development and procurement in this year. And these numbers are based on historic numbers and based on percentages of what we know the refresh rate of esports facilities are. So we know how often per IT regulations we might need to buy new computers, or we might mandate new equipment or facility expansions. And then we're also looking at new facilities that are being built, which may range for flagship facilities in the 7-figure mark. There are rumors of 8-figure mark facilities happening this year. We will remain to see how much of those budgets actually are allocatable to esports. But in terms of procurements, companies like CDW, companies like Alienware, companies like Lenovo, and also third-party suppliers like, for example, Esports Foundry or Esports Supply, or the ACE initiative that we talked about yesterday on our services panel. So check the VOD if you haven't seen that. These are applicable to this estimated number. The other number above that is the 75 million estimated total revenues that the scholastic college esports industry, so non-inclusive right now of high school, will expect to see in this calendar year. So that gap between the two represents an estimated $25 million of revenue that will be trading hands between agencies, conferences, organizations, third parties, influencers, etc., to stand up college esports in some way, shape, or form. And you might think, wow, 25 million, that's a freaking huge number. But at the end of the day, it goes really quickly. For example, how much of that money goes out to support flagship live events and championships? Okay, that might be more than one might think. We might also look at numbers seeing which Division I schools are talking with college football or athletics associations to stand up, for example, a college football tournament, and which marketing agencies or brands or third parties are really scoping in on that, and how big of a deal would it be if we are having college football feature EA college football? How big of a deal is that for an organization? Okay, that might be 7 figures split among a couple of different parties. And going through from that side of the fence, as the money will flow to a select few at the top, which will derive the largest activations, and then flowing down selectively and proportionally, we will see about $25 million spent within the United States and Canada within our industry. This is a low number comparatively to really any other form of an industry that is dominated by agency work. This is probably a monthly number or lower for the influencer community that lives on Twitch alone, non-inclusive of, for example, Kick or YouTube. And so I cannot stress enough how low this number is, but at the same time, this is technically a record for the scholastic esports industry. And this is a really important step to be taken for sustainability to conferences and actual operators in the space, which will not be seeing any major percentage of these revenues. This is mostly going out through agencies that have contractual relationships, brands that are looking to one-off, three-off, invest, spend, and disperse. Still, really good food for thought. So drop in Twitch chat if you think that I am it or not, if you think these numbers are close, if you disagree with these numbers and think they're way off. I would be very interested to see what your thoughts are on that number. We also talk about third parties. There's two value propositions that are coming to fruition this year, and we will see a number of announcements, in my opinion, in the next 365 days, and really before the end of next May, within the conclusion of our spring seasons. And the two are leveraged connectivity, utilizing third parties, whether they're conferences, whether they're solutions companies, whether they are allies in the scholastic esports space. A lot of these third-party groups that are seeking to build their livelihood supporting scholastic esports are doing so and are leveraging their relationships to communities to execute on deliverables. And that translates immediately to that $75 million total revenue number that we're forecasting for the year. But that also becomes the value proposition for a lot of these communities. And when you're leveraging connectivity, that can happen on a national scale or it can happen on a micro scale. And so what we will expect to see is a lot more protectionism in terms of leveraging connectivity on both sides of the equation. So organizations are going to protect and leverage and try to maintain their levels of connectivity more so than they have in the past. And at the same time, we believe that schools are already starting to display increased resilience or increased focus on their own connectivity that can be offerable or leveraged by these third-party organizations. And so in some cases, some schools and some programs will take that place, and we will see them announcing work, announcing partnerships, announcing executions that historically have been done by these third parties from the college program side. But more realistically, we're also going to see this waterfall down into the next conversation, which is mergers and consolidations. As we mentioned, the total revenues for this year are prospectively low in contrast to the global esports industry and the global gaming industry and the global advertising industry. These are pretty much drop in the bucket numbers at a high enough vantage point. And with the number of conferences and organizations and third parties that are invested in the space currently, we have over 26 competitive entities. We will be joined by more, and some will leave the space and bow out and take an exit. In addition to that, we also have suppliers and consolidators and others and aggregators of other types that have their own educational initiatives, student initiatives, sales initiatives, etc. And while the industry is getting on a closer direction to supporting everybody, we're not there yet. And we all know this because we know how salaries work in our space, and we know job opportunities and availabilities in the space are limited in certain degrees. And to sustain and preserve some of these initiatives, we will expect to see mergers and consolidations. This year, we saw a few last year on a minor scale. We predict to see some major mergers and consolidations this year on a national front as well as on regional fronts. So what does that mean for students? Well, it means that by the end of this year, we may have less competitive opportunities than before, which may not necessarily be a bad thing because those opportunities will be reinvigorated with either healthier cash flows, healthier opportunities, more prize pool, or more opportunities for travel. On the same side of the equation, this will mean that from a matriculation, from if you are a current student in the industry now and you are looking to get involved in the scholastic industry upon graduation, this will also mean that there will be a reduced number of roles in our global North American college esports industry throughout this year and perhaps into another year, until the bear market of gaming in general concludes its corrective nature, and the $75 million revenue number that we're forecasting does continue to increase, which it has been increasing at a positive rate, and we're happy about those rates. The last thing that will come from all of this, especially through the agency conversations and especially from the one-off event conversations, that there will be a record number of events by third parties. So what does this mean in relation to leverage connectivity, and what does this mean into our ecosystem as a whole? I'll use an example. Most recently, this week, we have heard announcements of the upcoming next iteration of HuFest, which is a storied and wonderful tournament that has a lot of history and a lot of positive love in our collective industry's mind and heart. And a couple of years ago, HuFest was the only one of its kind. Last year we had Boost on the Beach, and we had other events of that nature. This year there will be more. And that means, on one level, the schools or the programs that are typically invited first to these number of events will either have the lion's share pick of traveling or online event opportunities, which will make those programs more attractive to students in recruitment because they will be selected more, they will come to mind more easily. But on the other side of the coin, not everyone will be able to attend everything and participate in everything, which means we should be able to see newer faces or schools that have been less prominently propped up within our online community more regularly. And so, me personally, I am hopeful to see new names. I'm hopeful to see new faces, and I'm hopeful to see new leaders emerging from this trend of viewing and seeing more events coming out in our space from other people. So let me know in Twitch chat if you agree with that or not. Let me know if you think that more events will simply mean more of the same, or are you excited to see new faces, perhaps maybe your own, rise up on what we'll call our national stage. And moving on to our next slide, let's talk about a couple of real trends, because we've only dipped our foot in the water here for 2024 and onward, and there's some real heavy conversations that need to be held. So let's talk about a couple of those. Over this past summer, we've had a lot of discussion and discourse on social media and within communities about some of these topics right here. We're talking about, what is the delineation between esports and sports? Why is it that historically we haven't supported sports titles within our communities and within our student populations, but nevertheless, they're still one of the most commonly played games that can be found in any random student's games library? And does that mean that we should be supporting them more? Well, we will see this year with college football, and we'll see this year with the college NBA 2K initiative that will be further discussed tomorrow. At the same time, this whole conversation relates to an athletic conversation. We know that about 44% of our programs live under athletics. And so by default, esports is a sport in the eyes of many administrations. That's not what we're talking about, though, right now, because in this broader conversation, when we also talk about success, and we also talk about what is a program meant to achieve on your campus for your students, what is a definition of success? We talked previously about how we'll have a record number of academic integration initiatives. Over a third of all of our schools are working on something or have announced or have executed on this. Where does this fit in? And this conversation is very important to be mindful of, because this is the value equation. This is how directors think. How can I attract, retain, grow, and develop my students? And if we are going all in on the sports mentality, then that will be to the detriment of the development of other initiatives. Or it will be left to a select number of schools to raise that flag and push it forward in their own way, shape, and form. And we will watch retroactively, and we may support it, or we may comment on the side, yeah, but they don't really do well in NACE, or they don't really do well in NECC, or they never placed in CECC. So who cares? But those students care. And that's very important that we need to be considerate of because it represents opportunities for all. And on the bottom left of the corner, as we talk about more events, we talk about inbounds within industry, we talk about agencies, we talk about leveraging of connectivity, and we talk about how some schools may be taking that on themselves more so. Of course, we have the Division I conversation. And we will have more of that conversation later on today. So please do not miss that panel with wonderful Division I directors speaking truth and their perspective to this conversation. But nevertheless, a lot of these conversations are only possible because of name recognition. And that inherently excludes a large number of schools that might exist within smaller demographics, smaller schools, different location. It's not your fault that you're not a Power 5 institution or that you're not an NCAA listed Division I school. But nevertheless, the reality is those schools are going to get the majority of these opportunities that will be made available to students. And that is in essence the conversation between, do we have national conferences and fully open participation that is culturally mandated and supported to run as such? Or do we start to tacitly support and acknowledge and affirm that select schools got their own thing going on and they're going to do it themselves, and that door is shut if you fall outside a qualification box? And what does it mean for the schools that are looking to represent themselves to an administration? What's the national trophy? What does really define competitive success? And those are all conversations that will be ongoing. And that is all a debate that we are talking about and we're going to learn about and will not be finished by December 2024. It will have only just begun, because we also are hopefully going to see more inroads on the path to pro, which we have seen executed so tremendously well by our flag bearers and friends, Maryville University, who are also Dragon Steel and competing in the NACL well against many LCS teams and many professional players in the League of Legends community. And we know that there are other schools that have conversations and direct connections and regular communications with pro team. And we know that there are schools that have regular conversations and communications with publisher esports relations. And that will also be an increased trend that we hope to see more of in the future, especially when the state of competitive play within some publisher departments remains in question. What happens with Rocket League now that Blast is in charge? It also gives an opportunity for those who can speak with Blast to lobby better for a better scholastic pipeline. And ultimately, watching success beget more success will help advocate for a economically sustainable path to pro that pro organizations are incentivized to work through to elevate our students at the highest level of our stages into the professional stages. So that is what will also be next from the furthest end of competitive development. All of that to say, we're not all on the same line here. And that is really important to really emphasize and really share and really dial in on. Everybody looks at the Maryville success story and they say, okay, well, it's been around for almost 9 years and it's gone from A to B to C to D. So I can do that too. maybe you can. But in reality, a lot of us are on different levels. We may not have the same level of funding. We may not have the same levels of FTE support. We may not have the same campus population. We may not have the same number of Grandmaster, Challenger, Radiant players in our pool to pick from. And so we need to understand that success looks different for everyone and the trajectory looks different for everyone, which is why it's so important to be mindful of all of these greater trends and conversations, to note that the space and model that is being pursued by some will not universally apply to everybody else. And for that, I think is important that we keep that in mind. Now, we've got just a couple of minutes left here, so we're going to go to our last slide here, which are Q&A from our Twitch chat. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat and we can talk about them. Otherwise, what I will do is reassess and lay some really heavy hot takes on for you all to perhaps ruminate on, call me out on, and check me in the near future to see, did it actually really happen? So in my humble opinion, one thing that we're going to see take off really this year, speaking towards more events, is I'm really looking forward to seeing a higher quality of events. That will come with the increased monetization and increased revenues that we're going to see in our space, especially coming from third-party organizations that have been operating our space for a number of years. We do have the trust, and they do have the faith from the community that they'll be able to pull off great events, and we're super supportive of all that. And there's also going to be a lot of new entities that will be trying to do things as well, perhaps either on their own. They might recruit a student, they might recruit a superstar, they might bring in a totally new cast and crew that none of us know about and nevertheless are paying attention to. So I'm very excited to see more events. I'm excited to see the progressive increase in production value of some of our most flagship events. And I'm also really excited to see a world moving in a direction in which the agency of the students to put on and create these productions and these events and these initiatives increase as what should be the case. I'm really hopeful for a world in which the students are able to learn the playbook easily that we have gone through trial and error to achieve, and they will be able to replicate our pathway a lot easier, which will help reduce errors, it will help reduce controversy, it will help increase opportunities for everyone, and that, on my end, is something that I'm really excited for. So I don't believe we have any more questions in the chat right now at the moment, which is absolutely a-okay. I think that my goal is leaving you all good information to think about and good information to consider as we get into our upcoming season. So I will leave with the last comment that esports is in fact rated E for everyone. And whether you are a public school, a private school, a D2 school, a D1 school, you have a large and active club, or you have a small and growing population, this upcoming year is a very exciting one for you because it represents the opportunity for you to share your community with new people and to have new people discover your community. And at the end of the day, that is what we're here for. We're here to give a good student experience. We're here to give a developmental student experience. And hopefully, if we all do our jobs collectively right, our community's affirmation and support of college esports is such that we're your primary community. We're the group of people you get dinner with. We're the group of people that you develop with. We're the group of people that you build relationships with. We're the group of people that you study with. Because only by doing that will we really increase the size of our total population, the people that watch our streams, the people that register for our tournaments, the people that are excited to play against, the new upcoming team, the scrimmage partners. Only by creating agency and by really embracing our community at the grassroots level will all of these other things that are being built right now thrive. it would be so cool to have the Rose Bowl or to have the college football championship feature esports. But at the end of the day, if we're only featuring a micro percentage of the total number of students that would care about that, or we're featuring too much of the population of people that actually care about that, both of those are not good outcomes. So we need to do everything that we can to increase the size of our community. And we do that by embracing each other and doing it genuinely. At the end of the day, it's all just video games. It's all about friendship. It's all about bonds, brotherhood, sisterhood, friendship, etc. And to all of you, I hope that you think about that for your inaugural student club meetings, your inaugural back to school events, your inaugural fall semester lands, and everything that comes with that. So good luck. Have fun. I wish you all the best. And we will see you playing in the CECC regionals this fall and spring. Good luck to everybody. And I hope that you all stay along for our next conversation, which will be happening at the top of the hour, featuring the conversation about enrollment and esports. Thank you all and have a really good day.